Eve is the 11th episode of the first season of the American science fiction television series The X-Files. It premiered on the Fox network on December 10, 1993. It was written by Kenneth and Chris Brancato, directed by Fred Gerber, and featured guest appearances by Harriet, Sansom Harris and Jerry Hardin in his role as Deep Throat. The episode is a Monster of the Week story, unconnected to the series' wider mythology. Eve earned a Nielsen household rating of 6.8, being watched by 6.4 million households in its initial broadcast, and received positive reviews from critics. The show centers on FBI special agents Fox Mulder and Scully who work on cases linked to the paranormal, called X-Files. When Mulder and Scully investigate two seemingly identical murders that occurred simultaneously thousands of miles apart, they find that both victims' daughters may be the product of a secret human cloning project created by the government. The episode was pitched to series creator Chris Carter by freelance writers Biller and Brancato under the title of The Girls from Greenwich, with the focus being on genetic experiments conducted on sets of twins. The producers initially looked for twins to play the roles of Tiana and Cindy in Los Angeles, but child labor laws made using children from there so difficult that they instead searched locally in Vancouver, finding Erica and Sabrina Crivens. Plot: in Greenwich, Connecticut, a jogging couple find a girl, Tiana Simmons, standing alone. Nearby, they find her father sitting dead on a swing set with 2 incisions in his neck. Fox Mulder takes the case and reviews it with Scully, believing the death is an example of extraterrestrial cattle mutilation on a human being. When Mulder and Scully travel to Connecticut and interview Tiana, she claims to have seen red lightning when her father died and that men from the clouds had wanted to exsanguinate him. Afterwards, the agents travel to Marin County, California, and visit the Hardin residence, the scene of a similar murder. They realize that despite the distance between the killings, they were committed on the same day and at the same moment. Meanwhile, back in Connecticut, Tiana is kidnapped by a dark-clothed figure. When Mulder and Scully meet the Hardins, they discover that their daughter, Cindy, is identical to Tiana. Cindy's mother tells the agents that she was conceived via in vitro fertilization at a fertility clinic in San Francisco. There, Scully learns that both the Simmons and the Hardins were treated by a woman named Dr. Sally Kendrick, who had been fired for conducting eugenics experiments with Ova from the clinic's lab. Meanwhile, Mulder is contacted by Deep Throat, who gives him details on a Cold War-era super soldier program that produced genetically modified children identified as Adam, or Eve based on their genders. Deep Throat tells Mulder of a woman connected with the project who is currently kept in a mental hospital. The agents travel to the hospital and meet Eve 6, who tells them that the clones created in the project had extra chromosomes which led them to display superhuman intelligence and strength, as well as homicidal psychoses. The last 3 clones, Eve 6, 7 and 8, were institutionalized after the project was cancelled. However, Eve 7 escaped, joined the fertility clinic as Sally Kendrick, and modified the ovae of the clinic's patients to create new Eve clones. Eve 8, who also escaped, is still at large. Mulder and Scully are unable to prevent one of the escaped Eves from abducting Cindy. The Eve then takes Cindy to a motel where Tiana is already being held captive, and introduces the 2 girls to each other. The woman reveals herself to be Eve 7, who explains how she had created them to improve upon the project's flaws, only to learn about the girls' accelerated development, when they murdered their fathers. The girls, in turn, poison Eve 7's drink with a fatal dose of foxglove. When Mulder and Scully arrive at the motel, the girls falsely claim that both Eve 7 and Eve 8 were trying to goad them into a mass suicide. The agents decide to take the girls with them as they leave the scene. That night, when the group arrives at a roadside truck stop, one of the girls sneaks out and poisons the sodas the agents ordered. Mulder realizes the girls' plan and manages to keep Scully from drinking her soda. The agents then pursue the girls through the truck stop, with Mulder eventually capturing them. The episode concludes with Tiana Simmons and Cindy Hardin, now kept in separate cells and sharing the ward with Eve 6 in the mental hospital. They have been given the monikers Eve 9, and Eve 10. Eventually, a woman wearing a lab coat identified as Eve 8 comes to the ward. When Eve 8 asks the girls how they knew she would come for them, the girls each respond, "We just knew." Production. Freelance writers Kenneth Bilmer and Chris Brancato pitched the idea for this episode to series creator Chris Carter under the title of The Girls from Greenwich, with the focus being on genetic experiments conducted on sets of twins. The characters of Tiana and Cindy were named after the wives of Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who rewrote the original script prior to filming. Eve was the only episode of The X-Files to be directed by Fred Gerber, who Carter felt brought some interesting stuff to it. The producers initially looked for twins to play the roles of Tiana and Cindy in Los Angeles, but child labor laws made using children from there so difficult that they instead searched locally in Vancouver, finding Erica and Sabrina Crivens. The difficulty in finding suitable actors for the roles had led producer R.W. Goodwin to consider casting one actor in both roles and using special effects and body doubles to create the impression of twins. However, this idea was rejected as it would have proved too impractical and expensive. The scenes in the episode set in the roadside diner were filmed in a cafe copyright in White Rock, British Columbia, whose large gravel car park helped it appear very rural in its setting. A large awning was used to complement the exterior shots of the building. Reception. Ratings. Eve premiered on the Fox network on December 10, 1993, and was first broadcast in the United Kingdom on BBC Two on December 1, 1994. This episode earned a Nielsen rating of 6.8, with a 12 share, meaning that roughly 6.8% of all television-equipped households, and 12% of households watching television, were tuned into the episode. It was viewed by 6.4 million households. Reviews. The episode received mostly positive reviews from critics. In a retrospective of the first season in Entertainment Weekly, Eve was rated a B+, with the episode being called tidy, satisfying, and suspenseful. The episode's premise and the casting of Harris were both cited as highlights. Keith Phipps, writing for the AV Club, also rated the episode a B+, calling it a nicely realized episode that does a nice job building slowly and offering some shocks along the way. The acting and tone were also praised, especially the dead-eyed performances of the Crivens twins. Matt Hay, writing for Den of Geek, felt that the episode had a good, original story that proved you can't go wrong when it comes to twins and horror. With the girls' acting being called suitably menacing. Jessica Morgan of Television Without Pity gave the episode an A grade. Series creator Chris Carter stated he liked the casting of the episode, calling Harriet Harris' performance excellent. He also praised the performance of Erica and Sabrina Crivens, stating those two little girls were so wonderfully understated and creepy. The band Eve 6 took its name from this episode, as the band's member Tony Jensen was a fan. The plot for Eve was also adapted as a novel for young adults in 1997 by Ellen Stierber. Footnotes. References. Edwards, Ted. X-Files Confidential. Little, Brown and Company. ISBN 0-316-21808-1. Gradnitzer, Louisa. Pitson, Todd. X marks the spot, on location with the X-Files. Arsenal Pulp Press. ISBN 1-55152-066-4. Hurwitz, Matt. Knowles, Chris. The Complete X-Files. Insight Editions. ISBN 1-933784-80-6. Lovis, Frank. The X-Files Declassified. Citadel Press. ISBN 0-8065-1745-X. Lowry, Brian. The Truth Is Out There, The Official Guide to the X-Files. Harper Prism. ISBN 0-06-105330-9. External links: Eve on the X-Files official website, Eve at the Internet Movie Database, eve@tv.com.